Hello,
Hello, Nanko.
how are you guys?
Fine, how about you?
All good, man, all good. I spent a completely off digital media day outside under the blue sky, so felt different today. So, what's
A
up?
whole day.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost 6:30 here. So, yeah, since like 9 in the morning, I've been not in front of the screen, and this is like very rare nowadays.
That cannot be healthy.
That's not healthy at all, of course not. But that's how it is. So, anyways, what's the agenda for today?
It doesn't matter, man, because it's like the four of us here. It's no use us discussing. First of all, there's no agenda, and second of all, I don't think we can come to any conclusions. The four of us, because a legend is not here; he's just recording. So I don't know.
No, no, no. I think we should just have a general chat on different things that we have been talking about over the past couple of weeks. And if nobody else joins in, we can call it a day early, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Let's hang out a bit more. Maybe if more people jump in. Do you have anything you want to discuss?
Um, Let me think. I don't think so. I don't know. Last time I was having this discussion on the reputational points with Archimedes. So I don't think we reached a conclusion there as well. Did a little working since then. Nothing that, out of the ordinary. I think you guys are ahead of me regardless on that front. So that's about it from the grapes point. Otherwise, you know where the market is, man. I have been completely swamped with getting a Clinosaurus for the past 4 days.
I heard the public mint was heavily bought. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. Like, it didn't even last 10 seconds, man.
Oh God. How
But
many were
yeah,
there left after the whitelist?
they were, the whitelists got minted like 9,300. So the last 700 were in the public mint.
Yeah, okay.
And that got botted like anything. Nobody got
I
a
mean,
chance.
if it was only 700, I don't think it was even bought. It was such a hype mint that it just vanished.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I got one whitelist. I bought a whitelist. Somebody didn't have the Solana to actually mint it, so they were selling it for 4 Sol. I got it. Thank you to Crex for helping me on that. Got the 4 Sol whitelist, minted it, stayed the whole night up so that I could transfer it to my wallet. I managed to do it by 6 a.m. and then I went to sleep and then woke
Awesome,
up
man.
at.
So you minted it.
Yeah, yeah, I minted it. Now
Congrats,
I'm.
man. Congrats.
Yeah, but I have one in the pre-sale as well, which will be unlocked 2 weeks from now. So I'll end up with two Klenos.
Awesome.
Yeah. But one of them, basically, what the thing is that I am pushing my wife to get into the NFT game. She is an artist. She has been here. She doesn't know anything about crypto or anything about NFTs. So I gifted her a critter last week. I'm now asking her to actually get into it, see what the space is like, get inside as an artist. So probably I'm going to give her one of the Klenos so that she actually gets in the community. You know, that might give her a better chance of, exploring.
Sounds like a good incentive, man. Very
Yeah.
kind of you.
No, man, I think we should explore the space right now. This is the time. I am so excited on the crypto space. All this fight that happened in the past 20 days, the FTX debacle. I, Personally, for me, I see it as an opportunity of a lifetime, to be very honest. I missed the last bear run in the sense that I didn't put in more money. I just invested $500 worth of Ethereum back in 2016, and I've been riding on that ever since. Like everything else is a profit. So this time I'm like putting in funds that I have hoarded for all these months and years so that once the bull run comes back, I make some better money. That's the plan. And I
That's
see
the
a,
plan.
yeah, I see a lot of people have joined us. So that's great.
They heard you were giving out alpha, so they all joined.
No, I'm not giving out any alphas today. I don't think I have any alphas on me right now. The best alpha is to just buy.
You heard it here first, folks.
So can anybody come on the stage and let's start the call then? Billy, Dean is also here. I don't think they are listening. No, they
Yeah,
are.
I missed the first part of the call, so I don't know what has been discussed so far.
No worries, there was no first part. This is the first part. Welcome.
Nice to be here. Does anybody want to volunteer to run the call? Do we have an agenda?
I don't think we have an agenda. I think something we could discuss is definitely Archimedes' proposal, which it seems to be
I think that's going to be a
fun.
long one, but
I
we
know.
can start with something a bit simpler first, I think. Do we
Yeah,
have another proposal that's pending? I think community management sub-DAO proposal. Faber, do you want to come up on stage and talk about the proposal?
Yeah, I think this was the last call's agenda as well, but somehow we didn't end up doing that. Faber never came on the stage. He's typing on live chat.
Nako, did you get a Kleino?
Yes, I did. Thank you to Krex. Special thanks to Krex for finding me a whitelist seller and then guiding me how to get the whitelist from him. And it was a stressful 12-hour journey for me till I got the Kleno in my wallet eventually.
Oh,
So now I will get my other one in 2 weeks, which is one of the pre-sales. So I'll have two now. Now I'm thinking what to do with that.
did have they revealed yet? Did you see what it looks like?
No, no. They are revealing it tomorrow. I think at around 5 p.m. UTC. I think.
Cool. It
Uh,
the launch went very well. Very nice launch.
I think it was one of the best mint experiences that I've had in this space, and that's mainly because of Metaplex. They minted on Metaplex, and it was a smooth experience. There was just one glitch in between that there were four phases, so they had timed the first two phases for 1.5 hours, and the third phase was supposed to be for 3 hours before the public went start. So what happened was that the system kind of turned off the third phase after 1.5 hours. I think there was some timer issue. So they went off for like 5 minutes, came back, went on till the end of that phase, and then public mint got minted in like less than 10 seconds.
Yeah, it was fast. That was very fast.
Yeah.
900 NFTs in like 30 seconds. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I think it's a potential project. They are trying something completely different that has never been tried before, and the guys have been in the space, the founders, so they know what the community and the space wants actually. So I hope that they deliver on what they are looking for. But let's see.
Yeah, let's see for sure. Very, very overhyped, but there's a lot of demand. It's already 6,000 people holding these NFTs, which is crazy.
Started off, it started off with something like 8,000 people or so, 7,800, I think.
The white lists or the actual minters?
The actual minters. The biggest wallet after the mint was holding only six Clanos.
Oh, so was there a limit? Like you could get in the first phase, the whitelisted ones, did they have a limit how many they could mint?
So you could mint a total of six whitelists per wallet. But they never answered the question that what if I went and bought 10 sardinas? What happens then? How would that distribute to my whitelist? Because what they were doing is that if I had a triple minting wallet or a role for a triple mint in the first phase, and I also own a sardina uh, with it, so I would get my sardina whitelist in the next phase, and that's how they were distributing. So there were only six available for whitelists, and from there onwards, it was public mint. But public mint ended up with only 700 being minted, so that was like hardly anything.
Yeah, yeah, that's and these people that got these initially they were at Breakpoint, or was it earlier whitelists, the first
So
phase?
there were earlier whitelists as well. Uh, the Breakpoint event was the one which gave out sardinas, basically, and there were 222 sardinas in total. Initially the idea was to just airdrop them to people, and whoever held it would get a whitelist. But the way sardina's price went up to around 200 sol, they said that we'll add it to, we'll make it a generation zero kind of a collection, and we'll give it utility later on. So they haven't announced any utilities for it as yet, but they do plan to.
Cool, cool. Favor, so you're not going to come on stage. Does somebody else want to talk about the proposal from the community management sub-DAO?
Why is everybody being so shy today? So what this proposal, this community management sub-DAO proposal, uh, are we changing the way community mods are being compensated? Is that what the basic idea of the proposal is? I just read it. I didn't exactly get it.
I'm also not very familiar with the previous proposal. the differences. I don't know if there are any differences. That's why if somebody, Favor, if you want to clarify in the chat, does this proposal have any differences with the previous proposals that we had?
There's no difference.
I think there is a difference because in this proposal they're asking to get the funds up until to December, whereas up until now they were compensated for months that had passed. So in this proposal they're asking for funds to go into the squads, and after that be handled by the community management sub-DAO to be paid out to the mods.
Oh, okay. So basically, the basic idea is how the distribution of funds is going to be between the mods.
All right. So the only difference is that there's because November is almost done, is prepaying for December is the only difference from what I see. Does anybody have an opinion on this?
Hello. If you can hear me.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, Dimitri.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hola. Yeah, so it sounds like a prepayment plan so that they don't have to keep submitting proposals to get paid for work that has to have already been done. Which I'm not entirely clear on. Because this is USDC, I assume, right? And yeah, it seems I'm not entirely clear on who would control the squads. Who decides when the funds get dispersed? You know, we're saying the sub-DAO would dictate when the funds would be distributed. So the DAO itself is saying, let's look at this proposal to send the USDC that we would normally vote out of realms to send it to a squads. And maybe I'm not fully understanding. But is it just you three, Tariq? I'm sorry. I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to be aggressive. I just want to make sure I understand who's controlling the squads. And that's okay. Got it. So there's and the sub DAO is made up of not just you three, but there's Favor, there's Crex, right? There's a number of individuals that help manage the server, which I do think is an important task. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that it's not. I'm just trying to understand whether or not the proposal, the proposal for prepayment, it almost feels like this should be a 50-50 discussion where you receive biweekly 50% in advance and another 50% later on delivery or something like that. Yeah, that would be another important factor I think would be, valuable for us to establish, because at any point in time that we talk about releasing funds, this is one of the reasons why we have a bounty process, right? Where we have somebody that evaluates it. And if it wasn't for Writer and Red, the rest of the group would have to sit and evaluate whether or not the task was actually done, whether or not the work was actually delivered before payment was ever issued. So while I trust the individuals that control the squads, I do think that it's important that we have a very transparent and clear understanding of why and how funds are being dispersed in the first place. Please don't get me wrong, anybody that does moderation, because I know you guys are doing a phenomenal job and you always have, but you wouldn't give anybody your funds either if you didn't have proof from them directly, right?
I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm all for the guys getting paid, but if you're asking the DAO for funds, the least that can happen is provide somewhat of a report or something that shows what has happened and what is going to happen with the community management sub DAO.
Right. We scrutinize, just so that it's clear, I'm not scrutinizing just the community sub DAO. We scrutinize everything down to the grape, right? Bounties that are supposed to receive grape will scrutinize why it needs 10,000 grape versus 5,000 grape, you know? So I think it's important that if we can provide any additional information and proof in the pudding, that would be, you know, there's no way to foresee the future though. So prepaying becomes a matter of us just saying what are the criteria to release the funds from the squads. And I think more, no offense to the 3 people that are part of it, but I think community funds leaving the DAO would probably need a little bit more robust of a squads process. Sorry, Wales, were you referring to me, or were you referring to somebody else in the chat when you said you don't agree with the approach? Ah, got it. So the general approach is a little wonky. And remember, guys, for the sub DAO, just so that everyone's clear, please don't be offended by this. It's just we don't have a lot of members asking for USDC payment regularly. So remember, this is a unique edge case. This isn't like we do this easily everywhere else. I think, you know, every now and again there might come something that the DAO needs to approve, but it's not recurring. Thank you, Crex. But yeah, right. So we'll take a look at this. I think this is definitely something that sorry, I'm actually looking at the document that was provided.
Is Chobo still active? I just saw the name.
That I recall that name did not. You know what? I'm not going to speak because I'm not sure.
I don't see him having a role. Is that an old sheet? Maybe I'm looking. Yeah, I'm looking at February. Sorry, guys. False alarm.
Yeah.
All right. So we're looking at which months? August. Oh,
Well, the spreadsheet is up until August, but the guys are asking here for payment for up until December.
yeah. Okay. So Legend, you need to also provide the data for September and October, and November is finishing as well.
I think Legend is not listening. He's just recording. I think that's what he said in the DAO chat.
Okay. Well, we have to ping Legend. Let me find this. Yeah.
And if it's moderating, the other question is it moderating the Grape server or is it moderating the sub-DAO servers as well? Other sub-DAO servers, for instance, GAN and Dean's List or anything else that's out there. Just so that I'm clear.
As far as I know, the only other sub-DAO server the mods are active are GAN.
Right. Okay.
And that's also what they state in this spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. I just want to see because I don't think I see the most recent data. That's why. Sorry, I am still on my first cup of coffee, so forgive me if I'm slow to keep up. Tariq favor corrects, and I'm glad some members of the sub-DAO that want this to happen and Legend are here.
Get some Fred espresso in your system, please.
Oh, it's just normal coffee. I was up late
That's why.
making sure I got this proposal out so that I could argue with everybody.
You won't argue with me because I don't get shit.
It's all good. That was a very clever joke. There is no arguing. There is only the force. I think when it comes to moderation, I think the amount of time invested in completing the task and working on it are probably, it's a very difficult thing to calculate. And I know we've talked about it, and we know we need the moderator. So this isn't a question of the fact that somebody needs to get paid for work that they're doing for moderation because it's a necessary task. But I think identifying and quantifying something that we can all agree is something that can be presented is probably the only thing missing here. Which I could look at the discords and see in the help channels that there are individuals that are very active to help others, and there are even people who are not moderators that are active in the help channels, for instance. Not to mention other changes that might be happening behind the scenes that we don't see. I mean, you could see anybody who wants to go look at the Grape Help channel as an example can see active replies in the help process, just for example. Over time. But to answer your question, Wales, I think there's also a matter of going and checking to see who's in the GAN server and helping there too. Anyway, I don't think I can come to a conclusion on this. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be resilient to change or updates, but I do think it's good that we have this conversation. And when I say we, I mean not just me monologuing, but whoever wants to come up and speak about this on stage, it would be better, most likely. And I don't think there's anybody capable of doing that right now.
Yeah, so maybe to summarize, I think as Tariq said, the general feel is that there's not much to moderate right now. So, in my personal opinion, I think that the amount of USDC and Grape requested in this proposal is, for me personally, a bit too much. And if this went on chain, I would vote no on it. So maybe the mods can take everything that was discussed here today, also in the chat and whatever, and maybe come up with a new proposal and with a bit more, with a report that's up to date and make a bit more structured to for the whole DAO to be able to see what they are working on and what they are requesting from the DAO. That's all.
Yeah, as much as I love the moderators and as much as I appreciate the work that they're doing, I think this prepayment idea would be difficult without past metrics to show and confirm what activity, what moderation that took place in the first place. Not that I don't trust the individuals that are controlling the subDAO, but I also don't think all the, an amount of USDC leaving without any metrics to a subDAO that's controlled by few individuals and not by more would be adequate as a process. And it's something I've said for all processes that we have, guys. It's not something I'm making up specifically for this. I'm not trying to put a blocker in place for this. Just clarifying.
Exactly, especially when we still haven't figured out how to get money into our treasury. Speaking of which, a perfect set. Can you guys hear me? Sorry. So, just as a side note, a while ago, me and Dean went after a Solana Foundation grant. Everybody who wants to the details on that can read the thread. But the TLDR is that we managed to get a Solana Foundation grant of 5,000 USDC for me to curate all the videos from Athens DAO Hacker House X. I received as payment 3,000 USDC, and the remaining 2,000 USDC went to the DAO treasury. So you can also check the transactions on that thread. And yes, that's basically our first income. You're welcome.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's fantastic and excellent work on that, Zacharias and Dean. Also really positive to see the inflow. I was going to ask how the DAO, I'm sorry, not the DAO, the presentation you did in that you had posted went. The one in the Athens hub. What was that, if I recall?
Oh yes, the workshop in at Impact Hub in Athens. Yeah, that went awesome. Actually, if Dean wants to come on stage because he was one of the presenters. If not, I can also do it because I was also there and Wales was there, and we actually recorded the whole staff together with Wales, and there is going to be a video of the whole workshop. So stay tuned for that as well.
Okie dokie. Thank you for that. But okay, so back to the subDAO discussion. I really would like to have the subDAO leaders that are going to be managing this come up and speak to it a little bit more, and provide some context around the metrics that we can provide in the discussion to be able to justify releasing the funds after the fact, before we start talking about releasing the funds pre-funded. And also the process in general might just need a slight revamp. add a couple more people to the sub-DAO wallet that are part of the community or the DAO, potentially. Up to you guys, but that's my two grapes. Quick question: are we, in theory, is the payment for the sub-DAO for the community moderators behind schedule? Is that my understanding?
I think it always is. Like 2 months pass, and then they come up with a proposal for the months that passed.
Right. I mean, for the grape, I would say okay, but for the USDC, not sure, guys. That's just my two grapes. And repeating, I think the moderators are very important. Just that I'm clear on what I'm saying. And again, I'm not the only voice here. Just to be even clearer, there's a whole DAO that can vote on this.
Yeah, exactly. If the mods can go with the existing proposal on chain, obviously.
Yeah. If there was a proposal that provided ample metrics for previous months that had already been done and submitted with supporting documentation, then that would probably be easier of a discussion than talking about prepayment. But I don't think everybody in the DAO is totally clear on what the metrics are. Clearly, from this conversation, even if there are check boxes. And I'm glad somebody's keeping the a level of documentation up to date, because it's important. And I do think moderators should be compensated, just to be clear. I'm just discussing the process in which that happens. Right. For a previous month, I don't think it's an issue, as long as documentation is provided that just shows accompanying it, saying this is the work that was done. That's it. But for a future month, I don't think we're there yet to be able to prepay, is what I'm getting at. Just responding to Crex. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, and also the great thing about DAOs, Grex, is that you decide your fate. So you're also part of the DAO. So most people in this conversation are saying right now that there probably should be more metrics behind your proposal. And since we are all in this Discord server most of the time, we get the general feel of how active the server is. So maybe the compensation should be appropriate. That's all we're saying, I think.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it needs to be post work, not pre work. in its current state. Yeah, I understand. And I get the idea of asking for the funds in advance so that they're there and they're ready to go. It's similar to the notion of the bounty, right? Because who's to say that the moderation will get paid out by the DAO? That's not. I don't think that that's what we're questioning. I think the moderators will get paid for previous months that have been worked. It's just a matter of submitting the proposal with ample documentation. Prepayment is the only issue here because because yeah, I think it's okay to ping the DAO and put the proposal in for the at the end of every month as long as there are metrics to prove who deserves the compensation. Is what I'm saying. Agreed, Kirk. Moderators should be compensated. Understood, Favor. I don't want to wait. I don't want to belabor this. I'm just saying all it needs is a proposal to say to compensate for the month. If we're late August, October, September, October, November, or whatever, it's because there's been no proposal that's passed yet, right?
Yeah, I think the two problems here are that the prepayment thing makes the proposal harder to pass and the lack of the information. So if by Tuesday we have the information for the current months and we just don't include December, I think there's a higher probability the proposal would pass on chain.
Agreed. That's
That's
exactly what
just
I'm saying.
my opinion, though. Maybe we should wait for other comments.
Yeah, so I agree with Kirk. I think it's time that we move on with a call. The moderators received enough feedback from the DAO, I think, both in chat and on the stage, so they can proceed as they want with an on-chain proposal or with a new discourse proposal. And I think it's time that we start discussing Archimedes' proposal, which seems very interesting.
Yep. So we can go into that if anybody feels comfortable with what we've said. The go forward is for the sub DAO. Hopefully that was clear. Just post for the previous months with documentation, and then let's discuss getting the moderators paid for the work that they've already done, because we love the moderators and we appreciate all the work they do. Changing it to a prepayment model is going to be a tougher discussion because I don't think we know how to approach it properly. And I agree with Kirk on his sentiment. All right. So we can jump into the next one, which I know has been a long-awaited one. You were probably expecting fireworks and something spectacular. But this is at least the proof of concept, first iteration of governance proposal for us to have incentives rewards. I'm just reposting the proposal here. It came in last night, so for those of you that hadn't been watching the draft, which I had kept under a different category in discourse until I had completed it, it's now officially under the DAO category in discourse. It's also been posted in the DAO chat, and it's also been posted as a proposal in the Discord proposals tabs, so that everybody has the ability to see it and the mini updates. I'm going to try and simplify it as much as possible because I know that there's a lot to read in that document, but I also tried to create high-level bullets that really call it out. There's a brief 10-bullet answer for a lot of the things that are being done in the rewards proposal. So I'll break it down into the five categories that it falls into. 1, there's a pool that we get to define as a DAO that says we have 500,000 grape to allocate every epoch to the rewarding of proposals and voting that is attainable by all proposers and voters that qualify. We'll explain what qualification is after. That pool is dynamically adjusted according to how much grape has been used over time for governance versus the total grape that exists in staking that may be inactive. So it's all the grape that's staked in realms versus the grape that is actually executed and worked in realms over time. And it's the current stake. So the most recent snapshot is taken to look at what percentage of the pool to emit as a result of how much grape is being staked in realms that's being used for governance. The more grape that's staked in realms for governance, the more of the pool becomes available. So it's not 500,000 grape is always available. It's whatever percentage is actually being used versus the total that's actually in realms. I'm calling that valid, just so that everybody's clear on the different types. And it's easier to understand this because the point of that pool is to release as much grape as possible for as many participants as exist. And those that don't participate today will have some allocation available for them to be able to achieve getting maximum rewards when they join so that it doesn't dilute the other participants that are active today. It also rewards people for continuing to stake grape in realms in the future. So when you receive grape or you add more grape to your stake, it'll be taken into account to release more of the rewards, but it doesn't impact the difference in what you receive for that epoch or the epochs that are being reviewed. So number 1, the pool, it's dynamic. Number 2, the amount of grape that's used for voting and proposals is looked at as a median of the grape that's been used over the last 2 epochs. So we're going to be looking at periods of every 2 epochs, this past epoch and the prior epoch before it, 2 epochs. There's a certain amount of activity that took place within those 2 epochs. Somebody may have had challenges. We may have had no proposals like we did in November. We may have had limited votes available during that time period. And the only way to achieve rewarding people for the most recent activity is to make sure that the review of the activity is recent and also weights it against a previous epoch so that it's not all based on one epoch activity. It also enables a rolling two epochs, which means we look back at the previous epoch and we look back at the epoch before that. In December, we're going to look back at November and October. So there was very little activity in November, which means there would be no rewards for November. But because of the way this model works, there will be residuals from October for those that participated in October to continue participating, assuming that they did. That's part two, is the time frames in which we're evaluating. Part three, the grape that's used to dictate your stake weight, the amount that you deserve rewards on, is the median of the grape you used. So we take snapshots every so often at random of the grape that's staked in realms. We also have all the data for governance that's on chain, that's been pulled down and reflects the user's wallet that's in realms, the activity on how many votes they have, the activity on how many proposals they've made. Each one of those events in the on-chain data shows how much grape was used to activate or action upon those votes. So we have a very clear view of how much grape you actually had at the time you were voting. Rather than look at the snapshots, we look at the activity during that time frame. And we can cross-reference it against the snapshots as a backup. But it'll take into account your median. It will not take into account your most recent stake pull, which means if you go and buy grape, or any community member goes and buys or adds double the grape that you had, your rewards for this epoch or the previous epoch will not be reflected on how much grape you currently have staked. It'll be how much grape you had staked during that time frame. And the median is the middle ground. The other thing is you have to have more than zero grape in your current stake to receive rewards, and it has to be more than 80% of the median stake that you had before. What does that mean? If you had 100 grape in October, September and October, for instance, and now you have 79, you would be excluded from receiving rewards because you're below 80% of your previous median stake, which means you're no longer, you've removed grape from the equation, right? So you must maintain whatever grape you're going to have staked in realms, you must maintain 80% of it. You can maintain 70% of it. You can maintain 60% of it, right? Sorry, it's 70%. I think I was using the old model. 70%, excuse me. So it must be 70% of your previous. So it has to be 69. No pun intended. That was not intentional. But if you had 100 grape in the past two epochs and now you have 69, you're not eligible for the rewards that you would have received because you've removed 30% of your grape. And you have to have had at least one vote between the entire time period that we're looking at. Number 4. Just to recap, number 1 is the pool, which we explained is dynamic. Number 2 is the time frame, 2 epochs. Number 3 is how we look at the stake, your stake versus the overall stake. Just to be clear, the total stake that's used to decide how much of your stake weight is used is based on how much of it was actually active during that time period. So you don't get diluted by having the total stake of what's currently available in grape or currently available during the current epoch. It's whatever you had available during that prior epoch. It's a percentage. If I have 100 and there's 1,000 grape total that was used, I have 10% of the overall stake weight. Nobody really has 10% stake weight of all the grape that's staked today. So imagine that's in the 1 to 2% range at most for any given user, which means the pool would only emit that much of their stake 4 rewards at most. Okay, so number 4. The rewards are broken down into proposals and voting. From the pool that we said was dynamic, 80% of it goes towards voting, 20% of it goes towards proposals. What does that mean? That's 400,000 grape for voting and 100,000 grape for proposals, each epoch, or each rolling epoch, I should say, because we're looking at the prior 2 epochs. It requires that you remain active, that you vote, that you maintain 70% of your stake over time, and that your balance is above 0 grape, that you continue to stake in grape in realms to be able to receive any emissions. And then number 5, the rewards formulas, which is probably the hardest part to understand when you're looking at it, and it might be an epoch is 1 month. So any activity that you've done within an epoch. Right. Thank you, Kirk. Epoch in general is the notion of some time frame that's dictated as the period in which you're evaluating this. Right now, our epochs are one month, because it's easier to be able to confine and review activity within those time periods. And if we change the time periods, we could be doing this weekly, and we'd be able to just be reviewing week over week. Of course, it makes the calculation a lot harder. So here's number 5, and this is the last piece because I don't want to monologue this, but that so far is the explain it to me like I'm 5 version. Number 5, the rewards formulas. Taking into account that you have 80% of the pool that goes towards voting and 20% that goes towards proposals. Your votes and your proposals are a factor of how many proposals or votes have happened. So reward formula A takes into account that 80% pool that gets allocated towards let's say the 400,000 grape. It takes your stake weight based on what you actually use during the epochs that are being evaluated, the percentage, and you basically have a pre-allocated number there that says you could receive up to this much grape because this is how much you staked, which helps ensure people continue to stake, because the higher you're staking, the higher your rewards will be, because they'll effectively compound. That's the easy way to do this. However, because this is governance-based, we also have to factor in how many votes did you execute versus how many proposals existed, which is the easy way of doing this, meaning there were 14 proposals in September and October collectively. If you voted on all 14, you would get 100%, because 14 divided by 14 is 1. Okay? If you voted on only 7 out of the 14, you get 50%, because that's half, right? Simple. So you're eligible based on your stake, and you're also eligible based on your voting activity, which makes this super, super simple. For the proposals, it's the same concept of the voting pool that exists, which is 20% of the overall rewards pool. Your stake weight dictates how much you can be allocated, and the number of proposals you created versus the total number of proposals that have happened, which is very similar to the way that the simple model that Wales' friend had proposed, takes that into account, but allocates a smaller amount as an additional marginal value for creating the proposals, because you're already getting rewarded for having the proposals in the first place and having voting rewards that are distributed to more people for participating, because proposals both take time, but they also require the entire community to get behind it. So it focuses on rewarding voting, and it focuses on rewarding proposals simultaneously, and The important thing to remember is proposals that are captured and included in this are only qualified proposals. They have to be a community proposal. They have to have successfully passed or been completed, and they have to exceed 75% of the voting threshold. We can change that if we want to. I threw out a number just so that we have a qualifier. It could be 2/3, 66% if we wanted it to. It could be 3/5 or 3/6, whatever you guys want to do. That's fine. I think 75% is ample to say, as long as something receives a 75% approval rating from the entire DAO, I think that it's a safe bet that that's something that the entire DAO agrees on. Why does that matter? Because creating a proposal just to get it through without it having been discussed with the DAO, that could generate some type of negative activity or feedback that says it's not something that wants to happen, automatically takes into account the potential for somebody that might want to try and take advantage of the equation or situation that's not here today. So, nice and simple. Only those proposals count. If we look at Deep DAO, we have 138 proposals that have been created from year to date, from December 2021 until November 2022. If you actually look at the qualified proposals, there's 54, because that's how many community proposals have actually passed and either been successful, completed. And so that's the only thing that we're rewarding voting for, and that's the only thing that we're rewarding proposal creation for. If anybody wants to change the criteria on that, we can talk about that, and that's an easy fix. We just need to change the criteria. What do we qualify as a valid, qualified proposal? Because then that validates and qualifies the votes. So that's reward type A. Last piece, reward type B. And this is the one that I created as a means of trying to get around some of the other challenges that come into play, like historic performance, reputation, something that actually looks back and says, are you brand new here? And is there a way to weight your activity that I just mentioned? We just said votes divided by the proposals that exist, proposals divided by the proposals that exist, right? Proposals that exist are the key factor here in determining whether or not somebody is participating actively. You could also look at votes versus the total number of votes that have taken place as a weighting factor, which we can always add in. The beauty is you can also look at the time, how many epochs somebody has participated. You could look at the staking factors. You can look at how many proposals they created. You could look at how many votes they've created, etc. Okay? Because all this data is there is a novel governance reputation formula. It's nothing spectacular. Don't start freaking out thinking that we've created something incredibly new. It averages out activity over time and tries to weight against the most recent activity, but also takes into account your prior activity. So if you've been active since December of 2021, for every epoch that's passed, that's a percentage. Every epoch counts towards your total overall percentage. If you've been active 99% of the time, or 100% of the time, that means you've been active in all 10 epochs that we're looking at. That's just one metric. What about the most recent? Have you been active in the last 2 epochs that we're looking at? That automatically creates a different percentage. So you can average those out and say, have you been active throughout time? Yes. And have you been active recently? That recent activity will count against your prior activity to say, yes, you were active for 9 months, but if you're not active in the last two epochs that we're rewarding people, it should slash your activity significantly, and it should bring down your average. And over time, your prior activity, if you stop being active, will eventually go down as well, because that's also an average over time. How many epochs did you perform? I can go into more detail, but I'm just going to explain the reward model B and just explain that that's a governance reputation factor, just as an example. So rewards model B, it's the exact same thing as rewards model A, with the difference that instead of just looking at your voting and your proposal activity, for the voting activity, it adds in a weight for your governance reputation. So it averages out. what your overall percentage of participation is in voting in the last 2 epochs, and the governance reputation factor, which is a factor of all those things I just discussed: your prior voting activity, your prior proposal activity, historic epoch participation, etc. And then the proposal rewards are, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm not using the wrong formula, because I came up with like 15 of them and I had to strip away and make sure we were only looking at the ones that mattered. And the proposal activity is a function of your epoch weighted participation alone, which means, did you just show up and start proposing recently? If so, somebody who's been here and active over time and been proposing regularly should probably receive higher rewards than somebody who hasn't been. But somebody who comes in that's new should also be rewarded, right? It'll create that same type of weighted epoch value for time factoring, okay? Which basically turns into a percentage over time. And that's why I explained the epoch so much, is to clarify. This helps create a percentage that says you may not have as many proposals as somebody else, but you've been active in as many epochs as everyone else. So you deserve more for the proposals that you've created because you've been here and you've been out operating and active. You could think about this in terms of, it's basically looking at your stake weight, saying that your stake weight is going to matter, and saying that because you took your grape, you put it in realms and you used it towards voting, you deserve something in regards to all the grape that was used during that time period. The only difference in reward model B for the stake weighting is, instead of looking at your stake weight against all the voters for rewarding proposals, because it's being weighted by epoch, it's actually looking at the stake weight of all the proposers. So instead of looking at all the grape that was used for governance during that epoch, those 2 epochs, it's looking at all the voting grape, all the proposal grape used. So anybody that created a proposal, it's added up as a total pool of the grapes weight staked. And you would receive an analogous reward according to how much grape you have versus all the proposers that created a proposal during that time period. And that concludes my very long-winded 20 minutes. Explain it to me like I'm 5, but it sounds more like you're in a lecture in university and you probably fell asleep and want to wake up to see what we're talking about. So I apologize for that. And that's not a pun on anybody here not paying attention. There's a lot of data to read through, and there's a lot of data in the spreadsheet that was provided to accompany this discussion. And played around with the numbers enough to know that it at least starts us off on the right foot. We can go back in time. We can take different snapshots for each 2 epochs that we want to reward people for. And we could do that within the next, week. Basically come out with a snapshot and then have something where we define each 2 epochs. This is how much the wallets that are currently active in Grape for the last 2 epochs, last 3, because we're coming up to the close of November, and reward everybody and give them the ability to receive that grape. We could also average out reward model A and reward model B to come out with a final number that says this is how much grape they deserve based on that. Or we can come up with a totally new reward formula if either one of these approaches is either too complex or something that anybody thinks needs additional effort and work to figure out. But remember, the stake weighting kind of mitigates a lot of that. In reward model B, if you're the only one that created a proposal, that could be the only challenge that we could experience, but that hasn't been the case yet. And nothing that's happening in this epoch will be rewarded because we haven't had any proposals. And I'm thinking that might be good to add in another qualifier. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that. And hopefully we can move forward with a model that everybody can agree on. My personal preference is reward model B, and changing the stake weight for the proposal rewarding back to the total amount that was used for voting in total. Since it dilutes the value according to how much was actually used in governance, as opposed to specifically for voting proposals. Yeah, and look, I think our dashboard only shows the total number of proposals that exist, period. I don't think it's adding in a filter for qualifying this. This is stuff that happens, it has to happen behind the scenes today, but I also think it's something that if we ever needed to take this calculation on chain, you could easily just put in the parameters as it qualifies because the status of the proposal is X. The threshold on the quorum was achieved at X. This is how much Grape was used to vote for it, etc. So I encourage and invite everybody to review the discourse proposal. Take a look at the spreadsheet. I will be posting the metrics that I typically post. But this is the same spreadsheet that I maintain those metrics for governance. And it's also the location where everybody can find this information in the future. And if you want, feel free to copy the spreadsheet to your own Google account if you have Google, or not. Just download it into an Excel, and you can play around with the numbers yourself and come up with your own formulas if you'd like to propose your own models. But the data is there, and I look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts. And hopefully we can come to an agreement that this is something that we could effectively implement by Tuesday on chain, to have at least one proposal this month, and something that'll actually end up yielding value to everybody who's been a faithful and loyal supporter of our DAO community, and also rewarding all that wonderful prior activity that they've already spent time on. And there have been a lot of us that have been there, and it distributes the Grape in a way that is at least amicable for the work that they've already done. Thank you for listening, and sorry for the very long-winded explanation, but I know reading the proposal versus hearing me say it, I'm not sure which one's better at this point, but that was the quick version, believe it or not. And again, I'm still on my first cup of coffee. But thank you for listening. And hopefully I didn't put you to sleep on a Sunday, because it's too early for that. Thanks, Nanko. So yeah, 5 points, just recapping. Rewards pool is dynamic. Number 2, the time and the period of the epochs that are being evaluated as the most recent and weighted are the last 2 epochs. Number 3, the user stake can change and vary depending on how you look at it. Number 4, you guys, you're killing me in the live chat. Number 4, the totals of what you deserve to be rewarded for, and the governance and the reputation formulas are all based on your activity over time. You can play with the numbers any way you like, and you can try and average them out. You can create models in which you look at your votes versus the total votes, or your votes versus the total proposals. But because the rewards and the pools are stake weighted for you, each individual user is looking at that pool using the Grape that they have in their wallet over the time period that they participated. And it's only the median during that time period. Their current Grape has to be above 0 and above 70% of what they had during that time period. Which means it'll always assume you have to have either the equal amount that you had during the time period or more. If you have less by 30%, you're not eligible for the voting rewards, or the governance rewards, I should say. And a governance model in which enables us to be able to look back on time and weight based on your participation is added into reward model A. Reward model B. Number 5, there are 2 reward models, reward A, reward B. Reward A is basic. Reward B actually factors in your reputation over time and your participation over time. Thank you for listening.
I think am I rugging? 1, 2.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey guys.
Sorry, did my
All right.
proposals bore anybody? What did you guys think?
We thought it was very exciting, thrilling, and we can't wait to. No,
Thanks, bro.
you've done a lot of work on it, and you've put a lot of thought in it. So it's really, really important to try to get the perspective of everybody in the community, but also what the think tank and of the DAO is actually working on and what their ideas are. What was interesting is when we spoke last week to Patrick, he was trying to make it easier, trying to make it simpler. And I was really thinking about what we have with Grape with regards to governance and how we've kind of tied that in with DAO tooling, because really we are building DAO tooling in the end of the day. So one thing I did share a screenshot before was when you go to your wallet, you could click your governance, and we do have the success rate. You can see all that information. Let me post this again. This is interesting because you could get an idea like DeepDAO has. It gives a wrong metric, but you get more with regards to what you could get out of the full scope of, are these governances working well? Are they not? Are they passing, et cetera, et cetera? There's more, of course, that we could do, more that we could add. But one thing that's worth noting is I think last week I saw there was something that not many people pay attention to, and it's one thing that we could build and capitalize on that. And it's something, it's a small screenshot, you'll have to make it bigger. I saw we do have a service DAO, and one thing that we weren't showing well was, who's showing this well and who's doing a good job at showing it? And you can't go to DeepDAO, you can't find it. But what if we had a better way to view it directly from your wallet? So now our wallet in Grape Art, when we go and we view it, we're going to see the full details, and we know exactly if it's a backed, let's say, token. We could see the governance, we could see the participants. We're accurately going to show it. We can have more data, and the additional data that we're going to show is going to accurately reflect what these backed token governances are going to have. You're getting a bit ahead of you right there, but it's something that we've discussed before. Our DAO and everybody has to think about what the next steps are. We haven't stopped building, and I might not be posting a lot, but nothing has changed with regards to the development, the vision we have. But we want everybody to be aligned. We want incentives to be aligned, and we want the vision to actually be executed the best way possible. It was really interesting when I looked into this of what can be done, and I know it has the Dean's List one has a specific VSR for it, so it's really hard for anybody to kind of get all this and put it all together. But think about this: what if more DAOs were built off of Grape backed tokens, and we enable that also? What if we were the enabler of making more DAOs using Grape as their governance? And based on that, we're able to also build a reputation. And based on what we also talked to with Potrack and what I heard last week, it put a lot of thoughts in my mind. We get a lot of metrics. We can do more things with what we're showing, but we're already showing a lot of data. We're the only ones that you could export this data and you could extrapolate it. And we haven't figured out exactly the best and the right formula, but I'm sure we will. And I think we need to tackle it. I personally do think that we have to keep it as simple as possible, not too over complex. And we have to take also into consideration what the other, let's say, what the data points are going to be that we could easily query this. Because if we have people that are manually putting data, that might be a problem in the long run, and you won't be able to track that, and it's going to be difficult based on your feedback, Archimedes.
Yep, it's awesome.
Anyways, I don't want to take more time. We do have more updates, but we'll share that at a later time. But I think that we should really focus on trying to be as creative and build, because even now that we're in a bear market, it's important to show that we're building together rather than against or trying to just do scattered things. So when we have to actually have a unified mission and goal, things get done, and I think the vision and the execution can be really good.
Beautiful, beautiful. And this is all amazing because, first of all, the exports do exactly what they need to do for the time being on an individual basis, being able to go in and export all the voting data. One thing I did find that I was going to actually follow up with as feedback is the notion of the proposal data also being exported. So being able to export that table of all those proposals into a format in which you can create an easy filter. If you look at an example of this, and I'm using DeepDAO as my only other comparison because they're the only other ones that actually have any data like this. Showing that data and making it possible to retrieve that data and also see who the proposer was that created the proposal and what the results of that proposal were, even though you can get them individually from the voting data. The one thing that's potentially missing is who was the proposer, and what was the overall result, which you could calculate using the voting data, don't get me wrong. And once you've exported each one, it might be advantageous to look at the overall proposal table, the first thing you see when you hit the governance portal, for access as well. That's just a thought, putting it out there for awareness. Status, proposer, the date of the proposal that was created, ending date of the proposal that was created, and the results, which you can already get from the voting data as well. But this is fantastic.
Yeah, we're visually showing this data. Now, if we need to export specific data for a specific proposal, that's definitely possible. We can always find ways to extrapolate the data that's going to make as much sense as possible. We are showing the author, we are showing the dates, so we have this data per proposal. The thing is, we have to think of what's going to make it that it's going to define what, let's say, reputation is going to be. So if we have that clear cut, we'll be able to build off of that, and we could figure out and tackle reputation directly.
Yep, and I think that was actually something that came out for those that may have missed the workshop with Potrock, that we were trying to establish and move forward with an idea on saying how would we implement reputation. By no means is the proposal that I've put forward the only model of reputation that can exist, but it adds in the factor of reputation so that if we come to a different conclusion on how reputation should be measured, and if it's something we think could be done on chain, which I think was the challenge Potrock called out, being, a lot of this, the calculations on how reputation could be conducted is either on chain or off chain. And unfortunately today, it would have to happen off chain until we can solidify the metrics that need to be calculated and creates contracts that can actually read it and do all that other lovely stuff. I don't totally disagree with it, but moving forward with something would be the key. So reward model B in the proposal I put forward actually takes into account if there is a reputation formula that is put into the formula today based on the metrics we already have and based on a formula that's been created, and you can all take a look at the spreadsheet to find the epoch weighted governance reputation formula. But Kirk, your work here and everything that you guys have done with this is phenomenal. I think it's very valuable for anybody that wants to run a DAO, in my opinion, and that's my two grapes. And it
Well,
has definitely
well,
come in handy. The stuff I tried to do.
the pandas, I don't know, some people that voted in one of their governances, they got a NFT after governance, and there was a user that was manually getting all the people that did their governance. I posted that they could use our tool, and I think now they're using our tool, and they're sending NFTs when people vote in realms, and they export the participants for the specific votes. It makes it really easy to airdrop stuff if you want
Yep.
to do it. And you don't have the ability to do that on Realms. You don't have the ability to do this in Deep DAO. Deep DAO also, it seems that it's lacking a lot of information. But I'm not here to say, what they're lacking. The point is, how do we use what we have and make it really good for what we were trying to do with regards to reputation? What are those points that we're going to need access for and use? If it's going to be solely what's on governance and participation on governance, we'll figure out the solution to do this. If it's going to take other metrics in other places like participation in Discord, which could be arbitrary, that makes it more difficult. And I think that's what Patrick was alluding to with
Yep.
regards to what those data points are.
Yep. And I agree. I think at the end of the day, it's at least valuable that this data exists in this current format and accessible to anybody to be able to do this type of activity. So really appreciate the work that you put into this and giving us the ability to talk about this tangibly. Deep DAO has been talking about APIs for a while. I'm not sure where they landed on it, and I've seen some updates, but I don't think they have this level of
Yeah, but you know what? If
accessibility.
you have an API with something that's already running, how valuable is it going to be? We have this on chain. We're
Right.
participating on chain. We're getting the data directly from the program that was written by Sebastian and everybody else from governance. So I would not rely on third parties to give us data that might not be accurate for what we're looking for. And then we're giving reputation out to people that might be irrelevant.
Right.
So it's really important to know where they're counting and what they're doing with those metrics. The proposals are correct, and I'm sure the proposal creators are also correct. But these guys are storing this in a database. We're actually getting this in real time from governance, but we don't need to do that. We can also store this using a storage solution that could be on Web3, and we can use maybe Shadow Drive and store old proposals, and then we could easily query these, and they're not going to be quote expensive because we won't have to do RPC calls. We just going to call Genesis Go and their technology, which is currently free.
That's awesome. That is phenomenal. Love that idea. Excellent. Thank you so much, Kirk. Appreciate it, and really appreciate the work you put into this for me to be able to pull the data to be able to even make this proposal in the first place so we can reward people. So this would have been me trying to hack different systems and looking through blockchain explorers to try and pull this data, and that was not pretty. Believe me, it would have been inaccurate at best.
So I think it's worth exploring what else could be used, what else could be extracted, what data is going to be useful. I think that's really a good thing and based on what what you proposed and what the document that you wrote is, how we could use that with what we have already, with the tech we have. Can we make something that's going to be exportable and maybe more meaningful, and what needs to be built? Because in the end of the day, something should be built for reputation, and something needs to be built. I don't want to be continuously making circles. I want to get the solution and get something that's going to be good and it's going to be used.
Agreed. And the proposal, by the way, has some nifty features in discourse that actually expand other tables, because there was a lot more data that went into this. So I tried to classify the different metrics that you could use: median, averages, single user, all users, like individual epoch to all epochs, cumulative. There's a lot that could go into this, and I don't want to just create unnecessary FUD by telling us that we need all of it, because it might not be necessary, but definitely different ways of calculating it. And if it could get on chain, it could probably answer the question about reputation on chain. So yeah, I'll give everybody the opportunity to look at your features here, because I think that this is definitely part of the equation, and also review the proposal, and we can recap on Tuesday if we need to, because I'd love to hear CryptoPause's feedback, Writer in Red, anybody else that has any feedback as well. But love the features, Kirk. Seriously, they're awesome. It's nice to see the updates and also to be using them, because they did
Hey,
come in
look, I
handy.
mean, let's take for example the mint that was yesterday, Clainosaurs. We have metrics for those too with the holders. You can get an understanding of what's going on, where they're held, and there's what the dynamic is. Where those mints going? Is it a bot or is it actual wallets that they're going to? That was a question that was raised yesterday. And with the tools that we have in Grape Art, you could clearly see if they're in actual wallets, which is very interesting. You know, you could be running a script and it could be going to the actual wallets by minting those. But again, usually it's a program that's doing the botting. But it's you could see some interesting dynamics with the holders also in Grape Art, and you could export the holders just like you could export in governance. You could export the holders too, and if you want, you could airdrop them something because you now have a mint list with all the respective addresses of those current token owners. So it makes anybody's life easier for getting this data and using it for their own, let's say, purposes of reaching out to people that might have these NFTs.
Yep, and my proposal probably wouldn't have been possible without that. So, just to be clear, it definitely added value to the Grape community for this particular event. Okay, so I think we covered a couple of things today, or a few, I should say. Community sub-DAO proposal. We'll look forward to the update on past payment and metrics. And then we can rehash and discuss prepayment after we've taken care of the delay in prior payments. For the current proposal that was just submitted last night, I know people haven't had time to digest it. We're talking about governance incentives rewards and talking about rewarding people since the beginning of the governance process that started in December of 2021, rewarding proposers and voters, and a basic concept of reputation weighting the value that's received for voting in reward model B. Reward model A is very, very simple. But I again would advise reward model B, because it actually adds some additional value for those that have participated over time and creates some notion of reputation based on their previous on-chain activity. I know CryptoPause isn't here, so we weren't actually able to talk about the Grape Vision, which is on the Miro board that we've all been working on. I would remind everybody to complete that, and I would love to have CryptoPause here when we're discussing it, since I know he, Writer in Red, and some of the other individuals that have been participating in that conversation would likely want to help drive that conversation together, not just us talk about it and get back to them. But if you haven't seen the Miro board, reminder to go look at it and add your 2 grapes onto that. I'm not sure if there's anything else anyone else wants to bring up, but we've been on the call now. I've been on it personally for an hour and a half. I know others have been on for 2 hours. If there's anybody that wants to come up and say anything or provide any updates for the existing proposals that were discussed, or anything else that you feel needs to be discussed, please feel free to join us. Is that it? Does no one else has anything to say about anything about the existing proposals or anything else? All right. I guess that means nobody wants to come up and say anything else. Have a wonderful Sunday, everyone. Talk to anybody who joins the Tuesday call on Tuesday, and have a great week. Bye now.